Welcome all. Hopes everything is great with you. I have a bit of a cold today, so perhaps I will lose my voice, but hopefully not. Let's see who's here. Dora, Yuri, George, Zebulon. Welcome all. Today I have prepared several Flurf videos. One of them is one from Brian's Logic, and then I have some others. Great question, George. Do they have a map? Of course, they don't have a map. And of course, the flat Earth is dying. I have looked at some familiar or well-known Flurfs and how long it's been since they last published a video or broadcast live. Mitchell from Australia, 2 months. Forget the Word, 3 months. Sleeping Warrior, 4 months. And Brian Toy, he who took over Ranty's channel when Ranty left Flat Earth, haven't been active for 1 year. So, is Flat Earth dying? Who knows? But it feels like it's going on repeat, and many of them are leaving. Okay, let's start with Brian's video. Feel free to comment it. I haven't prepared a script for it. Yes, Sleeping Warriors is sleeping. And if anyone want to join me live as a guest, jump into the waiting room on my Discord. Okay, let's move on to Brian's Not So Logic.
Well, how are you doing? This is going to be titled Longitude Reassignment. This is the start, the very start of what we've been asked for 8 years probably now at this stage, which is, where is your flat Earth map, right?
First of all, obviously Brian's logic, or Brian's not logic, thinks that flat Earth only have been around for 8 years. Flat Earth fools, we have had them for longer, but of course, we have never seen a Flat Earth map.
The problem we always had was that here we have the Gleason's map. I'm just going to make it a bit smaller. And what you have on it is the latitude and longitude grid that works absolutely perfect in this format. But you have a situation when it comes to the land masses south of the equator that are stretched out. Like you have Australia that's stretched out here. You have south of the equator of Africa and south of the equator of South America are all stretched and distorted. And maybe even some of the land masses north of the equator, but it's obvious that the south of the equator land masses are distorted. Now, the only reason they're distorted is because the latitude and longitude grid is placed onto a globe. So what happens is the actual sizes of the land masses get distorted when that globe is flattened out. But the reason the latitude and longitude grid works so well on this Gleason's map is because the latitude and longitude grid comes from a flat plane.
Okay. Of course, he's correct. Maps, when you make a map projection of a globe, different parts of the Earth or the map get distorted. You get, in this case, Australia is east to west too big, and so on. This is a well-known fact, and it is not in any way, shape or form a proof for a flat Earth. Another funny thing with this is flat earthers never read the text on this Gleason map. This is the original map was that in the middle you placed needles like on a clock, and it was an easy way to determine what time it was in different places around the globe. That was one of the main purpose of this map. It's not something that it's not to show a flat Earth or a flat Earth map. That's not the purpose with this map. And let's continue with his nonsense.
That's where it's derived from. All the measurements for the latitude and longitude grid all start and end with flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, which is the exact place where the globe's radius came from, because it was the creation of the latitude and longitude grid via flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris that allowed them to create the latitude and longitude grid, as all the spacings between the latitude, rings of latitude, along the longitude lines, intersecting the longitude lines, are all directly from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, right, with a marine sextant at sea. That's where it all comes from. So
he's a typical flat earther. He making things up. The longitude was invented, if you call it that, by Greek scientists long before Christ and long before the sextant. It have nothing to do with Polaris, and the radius of the Earth wasn't determined using a sextant in the beginning. It's he making things up. It's so funny.
They're taking sextant angles between the sea horizon, right, and the visible sea horizon and Polaris. Now, there's two reasons why the latitude and longitude grid have nothing to do with a globe. One is because you couldn't measure it on a globe because it requires a flat plane to measure it. Number one.
Okay, he's still hooked to the belief that you need a flat plane to use a sextant. At sea we have, at least in naval ships, we have sextants as a backup if everything stops working. And if you need to see the horizon, how do you use a sextant in the dark then? And another thing with sextants and those fools, you don't use them for determine the radius of the Earth, and you don't use them to find your way navigating. The basic principle of navigation is, if you don't use modern aids like GPS and so on, you have to calculate your speed, currents, wind and so on, and plot your position on the chart. If you're out at sea where you don't see any land masses, you for instance, every 10 minutes mark your supposed position, and then you use sextants or other types of aids to determine, is it correct where we calculated that we are? Because if you only had the sextants to navigate, what do you do when it's cloudy? Or then you're lost. So, oh dear. They don't understand the basics of the use of sextants.
On, right? Because they required a flat plane for their radius value, which they had to back engineer from, once again, flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. Because all they actually did was take the longitude lines, any two corresponding longitude lines, and make them meet, which gave them a radius in nautical miles of 3,440, and that then turned into statute miles is 3,900, or sorry, 3,856 or 65. Or sorry, let's see, 3,900. So anyway, it's their 3,000. Yeah, sorry, 3,958 and change. That's what it is. And get mixed up between their circumference and their radius. So if you take 3,440 nautical miles and convert it to statute miles, you will have 3,958 point blah blah blah, right?
I don't understand why he have to convert between miles and nautical miles. Why does it? Oh dear.
They rounded off up the way to 3,959. So, but that all comes from the latitude and longitude grid. They couldn't create the radius without the latitude and longitude grid.
What the beep do the radius of the Earth have to do with longitude and latitude? It wasn't used to determine the radius of the Earth. Oh dear.
But to have the latitude and longitude grid in the format it's here now, then it had to be shown to be in this format. It had to be measured, right, and created from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, which gave them everything from the GP point of Polaris to the equator. And then they just extended it, right, after that, all south. So everywhere, so they had 90 at GP point of Polaris to the equator, which is 0, and then they just added another 90 out in all directions. So they have 0 here and then back to 90 south. But it wasn't until after all that before they could really, take two longitude lines then and make a ball out of it, a circle out of it, and then make a ball out of the rest of it. Because that's all the globe is an orthographic circle. That's all it is. An orthographic circle that they claim turned into an internal 3D dimensional ball. It's like none of their maths is possible without the flat plane to measure everything off, because they.
Have any one of you heard any proof for his claims? And Brian, where is the flat Earth map? I haven't looked at this video before this. I chose it before because I knew it would be stupid and hilarious, but now we are 5 minutes into this video and he haven't arrived to the map yet. He have explained that this map is distorted and he's trying to prove that longitude and latitude was used to determine the radius of the Earth. Oh dear.
Can't measure angles off of the curved surface they have within their model. They can't do that. Everything, all the radius, every part of the globe comes from a flat plane. But what they did, not to be too long-winded with it, what they did is when they took all longitude lines and made them meet at a geographic south pole position on their globe, what that did is when they flattened it all back out again, right? Once they did that, they placed all the land masses south of the equator, like Australia here, onto their as their actual size on the globe. So it allowed them to shrink the oceans between like Australia, South Africa, South America, and Australia, right? They allowed them to shrink all the oceans, but when they flattened out the whole thing, it then stretched back out the oceans, but also stretched the land masses. So what's really going on here is they reassigned the latitude and longitude positions of these places by doing what they did. So this is why I'm calling this longitude reassignment, right? So there's a second reason why they can't do any measurements to Polaris for any reason, besides the fact that they can't measure an elevation angle off of a curved surface, right? That they have it in a model. The second problem they have is that their horizon is always refracted. So any measurement that they get between their visible horizon, not the reality visible horizon, but their visible sea horizon and Polaris, will never match the latitude and longitude grid, because their visible horizon is always refracted at a rate of at least 7/6, which changes their radius from 3,959 miles to 4,618 miles.
Okay, so refraction is something that we can see. If we look at the Black Swan, for instance, several photos and videos have been taken from that location at those platforms, and you see not as much of the platforms every time. More or less is hidden. So he can't deny that refraction is a thing, even if he believes that we live on a flat pizza. So in that case, it wouldn't be possible to use a sixteenth out at sea on a flat Earth if refraction was a problem.
Right, so they are always working with a radius that is at least that size and bigger, right? So they can never make those measurements. They don't have the flat plane to begin with, and secondly, their horizon, right? All the measurements when they make a ball out of the latitude and longitude grid, every point on that has to match Polaris. But in reality, within their model, because it's always refracted, the horizon will never match what they need it to match. So their refracted horizons will never match the latitude and longitude grid, making it not just impossible, even if they had a globe and that was the situation, the latitude and longitude grid could not exist, because there would be no consistency, because their horizon is constantly refracted at all these different rates of claims of rates or whatever. So it can't work. Now I will put a video in the description here of this video, a 40-minute video on where they got their radius from, and then another video on why their 7/6 horizon makes it impossible for the latitude and longitude grid, and especially any observations to Polaris to ever work within our model, right? Completely taking our model out. But this is about the starting of the creation of a flat Earth map, right? This is the very beginning of it. If you want a flat Earth map, this is the very beginning of it. Because, as I said earlier, the latitude and longitude grid is purely a flat Earth grid. That's what it is. It's derived from measurements taken off a flat plane. That's the only way you can derive it. But
so why haven't anyone made a flat Earth map? Because Brian in this video agrees that this is not the correct map. Land masses are distorted. So it's obvious that he will not present a flat Earth map. The longitude lines goes from the North Pole to the South Pole, and they are like a great circle. So oh dear. This is so stupid.
As I said, places like Australia have been stretched out. So here we have, right, these two black lines. This one here is representing, let's say, the longitude line that's running through Sydney, and this one here is representing the longitude line that's running through Perth. But the red line here would be the actual longitude line of Perth, because you have to remember this is stretched out, right? So the actual distance between Sydney here and Perth would actually be between this black line and this red line, not this black line and this black line, because that is a stretched out Australia. In reality, Australia is not that wide.
Interesting. How do he know the distance between those lines and how much is stretched out? Which map have he used to measure that distance? Or have he traveled between those places? Of course not. He have used Google Maps or Google Earth and measured it. He have, I'm sure of it, used tools based on a globe. Oh dear.
But what they did is by making a sphere out of the latitude and longitude grid, they also reassigned all the longitude lines south of the equator, if not some north of the equator, but all the longitude and latitude positions are basically reassigned outside of their reality. So I'll show you what I mean now. So longitude reassignment, right? Sydney is 151 degrees east longitude, so we'll hold Sydney constant for this, right? I don't know if when we go further with this, right, in time, if Sydney will be held constant, but because the latitude and longitude grid, just to show you, sorry, right, the latitude and longitude grid is red, east to west, right? So you have east and west in the latitude because you have from the prime meridian east and west, right? So we're talking about east here, we're talking about 151 and 115 degrees east longitude. You also have west longitude, but it's an azimuthal, right? This is another reason why none of this can work on a globe. This is based on an azimuthal reading, so it's always going to be around in clockwise motion, right? Basically, right? So that's another thing about the latitude and longitude grid, because it's red flat. It has to be flat. The whole lot has to be flat. It's measured flat. It only exists due to flat Earth measurements.
He thinks he has solved this, and no one have noticed this before. But it's all in his fantasies. He haven't looked up who came up with longitude and latitude and oh dear.
The whole thing works flat. So the only thing that doesn't work is by placing it onto a globe. That only skews everything up. But the point I'm making is it works in a circle, right? The longitude lines are all measured in a circular fashion, right? So from the prime meridian, they're measured east and west, right, in a circular fashion. So let's just say we're going to hold Sydney constant for this, right? So Sydney's 115 degrees east longitude. That's the longitude it's given at present. Perth is given 115 degrees east longitude, right? An airline distance between Sydney and Perth is 2,044 statute miles. 2,044 statute miles equals 1,776 nautical miles. 1,776 nautical miles divided by 60, which would be 60 minutes per degree, equals 29.6. 151 minus 29.6 equals 121.4. So this means that if we hold Sydney's longitude constant and use the real world distance between Sydney and Perth, then that places Perth at around 121 degrees east longitude and not 115 degrees east longitude. This is how the trick was done. So in reality, right, Perth is more 121 degrees east longitude and not 115 degrees. Right? And this is how the trick was done. So if we hold Sydney constant, right? Because we're reading it that way. That's how the latitude and longitude. That's how you read in azimuth. You would hold Sydney constant and read it around in that direction. That would place Perth at 121 degrees, because that's how it works out mathematically based on the distances between the two places, the two locations. So really what happened is there was a reassignment of the longitude lines when they created a globe out of the latitude and longitude grid. But the latitude and longitude grid only exists, right, because it was measured off a flat plane.
So they faked where places are. In reality, the longitude lines are closer together up north and down in the south. It's not a constant distance, and that's why this map gets so distorted. This map projection that he looks at.
It requires a flat plane to do the measurement. So if anyone wants to know about a flat Earth map, not that I'm going to create the whole flat Earth map, but this is the very beginning of it. For that to happen, there needs to be a reassignment of all the latitude and longitude positions of at least south of the equator, because the further south you go, the more skewed they get. Only because they made a globe out of the latitude and longitude grid, something that could never be created if we lived on a globe, because you can't create that off a globe. It requires elevation angles to Polaris, which you can't have, and it requires an horizon that's an optical location, but not something that's refracted all over the place. You can't use that. You can't use a refracted horizon to get your correct latitude with Polaris. You can't do that. It's total nonsense. So their globe was built off of a flat Earth, and all they did is they hijacked our latitude and longitude grid and made a sphere out of it, and then flattened the whole thing out again and stretched out everywhere south of the equator, and started saying, see, nothing works. It doesn't work because you have already mutated it. We have to now unmutate it. That's what has to happen. So everywhere out south of the equator must be unmutated and given its correct latitude and longitude positions. So Australia doesn't change in size. It only changes in size on this map because it's too big. You bring it back to its actual size. Everywhere south of the equator is bringing back to their actual size, right? But the oceans are kept at the same size. That's the only thing that's the only difference between. That's the only thing that's not working, is the fact that due to them making a globe out of latitude and longitude grid, they've stretched out. When they flattened it a whole lot out, they stretch out everywhere south of the equator. But in reality, that's not the situation. All these places are the sizes they actually are, and the oceans are bigger. That's what actually is going on. So that's how they made the ocean smaller, was by making a globe out of latitude and longitude grid. Which,
oh dear. It's a well-known fact that all map projections is distorting in some ways. If you, for instance, navigate very far up north, you have to use one type of map projections. Other is better closer to the equator and so on. That's well-established facts. And this nonsense about longitude and latitude lines, that they are used to the shape of a globe.
Made the whole of the Earth smaller in total area. But we know circles of equal latitude, for example, can be measured to a point that way bigger than what the surface of the globe Earth can hold. You know, there's no way out of it. So this is the start of. Anyone wants to know about a flat Earth map, that's the very start of it. The longitudinal reassignment, and maybe the latitude as well, reassignment. But let's start off with longitudinal reassignment, because we work in a circle in that situation. Now, I'm sure I'll get a lot of backlash for this. As I said, I'll place those 2 videos in the description. Watch them if you're new to this and you're confused by anything. This is a bit far ahead for a lot of people who might just be purely getting into this topic. But this is what needs to happen, because we need to have this map, but with everywhere south of the equator in its correct size. And all that means is that a reassignment of their latitude and longitude positions. We don't need to change reality. We just need to go back to reality. This was a change in reality. That's the problem. The globe was a change in reality. We need to go back to reality, not change it. We need to change from fantasy, which is what we've been led to believe we are living in and on for far too long.
Still, ships have no problem to sail from Australia to South America with great precision using charts based on map projections from the globe. And it's no problem for airplanes to do trips from one continent to another in the southern parts of the Earth. So, this video was as stupid as I suspected before I chose to show it. Oh dear. Oh, I know it was a long one, but I wanted to give Brian the opportunity to present the whole case. And oh dear. Hello, Mr. Ball, Nerd Alert, X-Large, and perhaps I missed someone. Okay, I will play a short one for you from I know you can't stand him, but as I said before, I'm listening a bit on Nathan Oakley's and Globebusters channels because of what I call a flat Earth war between UK and US. And this is a short clip from Nathan's channel.
It's a clown show, and for the most part, guess who the clown is? Flat Earther. For entertaining and enabling that shit. I don't look at the baller.
That is so true.
I don't look at the baller to indict him for that, because that's what ballers do. I look at, well, what's enabling this? Ignorance, wanting to get their feelings and their opinions and show their open-toed sandals, and they shouldn't be out here. Like globe dumpers, they shouldn't be out here. It's the same scenario. Go back to picking up cans alongside of the road. Supervise. We don't need that out here. We're beyond 2015, 2016.
Yeah, take heart that I share the same sentiment. In fact, I think I've worn my welcome a couple of places by, I mean, cause the chocolate, is that not what I'm screaming at the top of my lungs at 24/7? Wasting time, being enablers, jumping on red herrings, yada, yada, yada. That's literally all I do. I argue with flat earthers more than I do ballers.
Yeah, good. You should call them out. That's why I was the bad guy. Oh, QE, you're not letting him give us his feelings and show his open-toed sandals. You've lost your way. That's not why we're here. This isn't Dr. Phil. Whatever Jedi mind tricked you into thinking that this was Dr. Phil. Right? The flat earthers have lost their way. I don't know what infiltrated the gray matter up there into thinking, well, let's have a conversation. How do you feel? What's your favorite color? Get the fuck out of here. My God, do I even have to say it? Yes, I'll be the bad guy. Not a problem. Say goodnight to the bad guy. You haven't seen a bad guy like this, let me tell you.
Okay, let's stop that nonsense. The problem they have is that Glowbusters and the rest, they believe there is a force that acts like gravity, but it's electric and so on, some nonsense, and they don't agree on many of the explanations. So it's, in my opinion, it's starting to get one UK-based model how things works on flat Earth, and one US side. So it's an interesting development, and others choose sides between those two. Let's see who were. Hi, Martin. I have been away for 1.5 weeks, and during that time I have sent one more drone to Ukraine and one more big powerbank. And I did get this morning a message that they have arrived. And during my time out at sea, I received some more donations from colleagues and so on that I told about this. So today I ordered one more drone and one power stations that will hopefully arrive at my place in the beginning of next week. So it's moving. So thank you to all of you helping me, helping Ukraine. And as before, all revenues from the channel, ads, memberships, super chats and that type goes to humanitarian aid. And we passed, I think, 12,500 euros since the war started. So thank you once more. I have one more small video, and this one I will silence this one. It's the plain truth, and he always play music instead in his videos, and I have no interest in getting copyright striked because of his music, so this will be silent. For you who don't know plain truth, he believes in some magical, they call it, if you look at this, I don't remember the name of he published this kind of rubbish videos and claims that you don't see ether. He's talking about ether. He call it ether band. So I will stop on a better place on this. So for instance, this mirroring you see at the landmass at the right, according to him, this is the ether band, and it's the ether band that makes boats disappear with the bottom first and so on. And he get very mad at me. I made some videos about him, about his nonsense, but if you look at them, it's very poor quality. Nah. Seriously, what do we prove here? If you look at this one, for instance, the white moving thing is a lorry at a highway, and it looks like the highway is at sea level. Obviously, it's a bit higher up, but according to this fool, it's the ether band. So, according to me, he's all the time is publishing globe proofs and proofs of his lack of understanding, knowledge, and skills to use his equipment. There you have it, once more, one more lorry. And the magic ether band. This is flat earth science on a high level. And now we're going to oil rigs. And here we have, this is typical him, because everyone who seen an oil rig can see that a lot of the lower parts of the oil rig is missing in this video. And why? Of course, because of the magical ether band. I'm not sure what he wanted to prove with the sun. And reflections. What did he say? Hear it? And here we have a man standing in the water. This is science on a new level. Okay, this is pure nonsense. I'm trying to. I will have a live on Friday, and hopefully I will have 2 guests on that one. Then we will have a closer look on the difference between the UK side of Flat Earth and the US side. Compare what do they agree about and what do they disagree about, because I think that one is quite interesting. And hopefully next week 2 of the Ukrainian soldiers will join me on a live, I'm not sure which time of the day it will be. Maybe it will be evening time, European time. I'm not sure. It's not too easy to communicate with them, but some of them will go on leave next week. So then they have promised to join a live stream. I will go out with more information about that in the beginning of next week. Then Mr. Ball, yes, perhaps he think it adds a artistic value to the so-called observations when he puts video music to the videos. Yes, but okay, I'm starting to lose my voice. I'm quite. I have a cold, a quite heavy one. I have been out at sea in the cold too much, perhaps. So I have to end this live stream soon because I can't talk. So it's hard to make a live stream without any voice. Thank you for you joining the live stream, and I will be back Friday. I will release some videos, but I will be back Friday with two secret guests on the show. Okay, that was all I had for today. Brian's logic have proved that he is not logic at all. And once again, thank you everyone supporting Ukraine and supporting my drone projects to Ukraine. Hopefully I will be able to show some videos from Ukraine next week. But more on that later on. Okay, I'm signing out. Okay. Have a nice day and thank you for visiting my small channel. Bye.